So would you say at that point you had kind of exceeded, the drug use from within your social circle?
Yeah, I definitely did. Everybody was still smoking weed and drinking. The cocaine didn't come into play for probably another year. But yeah, I would just, yeah, like I had a couple buddies who would do the oxys too, but they weren't doing it like I was. They wouldn't. Next morning when I would get high, next morning, the night of getting high, next morning, wanting more and more and more and more. Like I couldn't just smoke weed without pills. Like I couldn't just do that. I always needed opiates. I always needed pills, Xanax, whatever it was. I always needed something to slow me down a little bit. And my parents got divorced when I was 17 years old, and so I moved from that small town up north back to the Bay Area where I'm from. And I ended up my parents got divorced, and I had weed all over my house and bongs, and my dad was really upset at my mom, so he wanted to sue for full custody, and the only reason he could use was that I'm a drug addict and that I have weed and paraphernalia laying all over the house. So he took that and ran with it. He got a lawyer, took pictures of all my bongs and my weed and alcohol and beer cans and the whole 9 yards. And he took them and he showed them to the lawyer. And my mom was devastated, thinking that she's gonna lose my little sister. At the time she was 5 years old, and I ended up having to go to the rehab, the camp, and at the time I was using drugs, but I wasn't using drugs like these people in these rehabs. I'm 16, I'm in this rehab. People are telling me about heroin and cocaine, Xanax. I mean, I tried pills, but I never did it like that. You know what I mean? And these people are telling me how they steal their mom's cars and crash them high on drugs and going to jail, juvenile hall, and it's nuts, And that made me want to try drugs even more, because I learned about all these new drugs that you could try, Molly, ecstasy, whatever it was. And so I took that program, not serious at all. Got kicked out on the 15th day. Went back to.
What did you get kicked out for?
Just not taking anything serious. Just clowning on the what is it? The workers there, the techs. Just not even taking just no care at all. You know what I mean? And I was so upset at my dad for doing that. So like I was almost doing it as like payback. And so I get out, I go back to my hometown, Half Moon Bay, and I'm not even enrolled in school. And it's my sophomore year, or my junior year. And I was living with my dad. I couldn't go live with my mom because I didn't say anything about it, but I got into my stepdad. He's this big Mexican dude, really big. And he ended up, I came to the house messed up on drugs, and he came at me, and he put hands on me, and I put hands on him. And I took it to court, and I couldn't be around him. My little sister couldn't be around him. And that was while everything was going on with my dad suing my mom for full custody. So it even looked even more bad on my mom with that going on. So I couldn't see my mom, my little sister, or my stepdad for about 6 to 7 months, maybe 8 months. So I lived with my dad. I didn't even go to school. I started working construction under the table, and I would get my paycheck Friday, getting paid weekly, get my paycheck, and go right to the dope dealer. And started buying the Oxycontin in the beginning, you know what I mean, the blues. And I started smoking them. I didn't know you could do that. Started smoking them off tinfoil. And it went from there. And that was the first time I started, feeling the effects of withdrawal. was when I would use heavily for a whole weekend and go back to work in the hot sun and sweat even more and just so uncomfortable in my skin. I don't even know how I did it, honestly. But I would power through each day and get that paycheck and keep doing it more and more. And eventually the drugs got so bad, the oxys, the Xanax, yeah, and it was all bad. I ended up losing that job because I just stopped going, and I started selling drugs. Whatever I can get my hands on, Xanax, coke, meth, whatever it was, I started selling drugs, just enough to support my addiction, pretty much. I always thought I was big time, you know what I mean? Like with $1,000 in my pocket, and I would just blow it all in a weekend on drugs and be back at square one. But yeah, I don't know. It was depressing.
How did you get into heroin at this point? Like once you had started feeling the kind of withdrawal effects from Oxy.
Okay, so that was what it was. I started doing the oxys, and they got so expensive, $30 a pill, that I couldn't pay for them anymore. And I had a buddy who I would always hang out with, and we got high together all the time. We grew up together. And he's like, I got pure opium. And obviously it wasn't pure opium. And I found out 2 weeks into probably smoking it every day that it was heroin. And I didn't even care at that point, you know. And I would justify it by saying, oh, I'm just smoking it. I'm not shooting it. I'm smoking it on tinfoil. It's not a big deal. Which it really was, you know. And from there, I started getting in a lot of fights, beating people up all the time. I didn't even feel human at the time. I was so depressed, but like I was always high. Like I didn't feel depressed. I just was a goofball, just running around, beating people up, doing drugs, stealing, just robbing anybody for their drugs or their money. And this was a small town that I was doing this all in. So like my parents started hearing that I was selling meth and selling drugs, and somehow I convinced them that I wasn't. But the whole time I was getting high and doing all this stuff.